D.C. sniper attacks. In the early autumn of 2002, the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, a sprawling tapestry of bustling suburbs, quiet neighborhoods, and the nation's capital, became a hunting ground. The air, crisp with the promise of fall, carried an undercurrent of dread that no one could have foreseen. Ordinary moments, pumping gas, mowing a lawn, or stepping out of a store, turned into scenes of unimaginable horror. For 3 weeks in October, an unseen predator stalked the region, striking with cold precision and vanishing without a trace. The perpetrators were not ghosts or phantoms, but 2 men bound by a twisted bond. John Allen Muhammad, a 41-year-old drifter with a military past, and Lee Boyd Malvo, a 17-year-old Jamaican teenager molded into a killer. Their motives, shrouded in shadow, seemed to spiral between personal vendettas, grandiose schemes, and pure malice, leaving a nation gripped by fear and questions that linger to this day. John Allen Muhammad was a man of contradictions, a figure who could blend into a crowd, yet harbored a darkness that simmered beneath the surface. Born John Allen Williams on December 31, 1960, in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, he grew up in a fractured world. His mother, Eva, succumbed to breast cancer when he was just 3, and his father soon abandoned him, leaving young John to be raised by his grandfather and an aunt in New Orleans. Life offered little stability, and perhaps it was this early chaos that planted the seeds of his later rage. By 17, he enlisted in the Louisiana Army National Guard, later volunteering for active duty in 1985. A skilled marksman, Muhammad earned accolades for his precision with a rifle, a talent that would later turn deadly. In 1987, he joined the Nation of Islam, adopting the surname Muhammad and providing security for the 1995 Million Man March. Yet, his life unraveled in the late 1990s. A bitter divorce from his second wife, Mildred, stripped him of custody of his 3 children, a loss that festered like an open wound. In 1999, he fled to Antigua with his children, engaging in credit card and immigration fraud, a desperate act to reclaim control. It was here, in the sun-soaked Caribbean, that he met a boy who would become his shadow. Lee Boyd Malvo was just 15 when he crossed paths with Muhammad in Antigua around 1999. Born on February 18, 1985, in Kingston, Jamaica, Malvo's life was one of upheaval. His mother, Eunice James, left him in the care of others while she sought work, eventually meeting Muhammad in Antigua. The older man, charismatic and commanding, filled a void in Malvo's life. By 2001, Muhammad had converted Malvo to Islam, isolating him from his mother and drawing him into a world of discipline and ideology. They moved to the United States, living briefly in a homeless shelter in Bellingham, Washington, where Malvo enrolled in high school under Muhammad's false claim of being his father. Classmates noted Malvo's isolation. He made no friends, a quiet boy overshadowed by the man he called Sir. Muhammad trained Malvo in marksmanship, using a stolen Bushmaster XM-15 rifle at a Tacoma firing range. The teenager, impressionable and adrift, became clay in Muhammad's hands, molded into a tool for a mission that grew increasingly sinister. The motives behind their rampage remain a tangle of speculation and horror, a puzzle with pieces that never fully align. At Muhammad's 2003 trial in Virginia, prosecutors suggested a personal vendetta. Muhammad, consumed by rage over losing custody of his children, allegedly planned to kill Mildred and disguise her death as one of many random shootings. This theory, chilling in its calculated cruelty, was dismissed by the judge for lack of evidence, yet it lingered like a specter. Malvo's later testimony painted a broader, more apocalyptic picture. He described Muhammad's 3-phase plan, a blueprint for chaos in the D.C. and Baltimore metro areas. Phase 1 involved meticulous reconnaissance, mapping locations, practicing escape routes, and striking with surgical precision. Phase 2, Malvo claimed, aimed to escalate the terror, targeting women and children to maximize fear. Phase 3 was the stuff of nightmares, extorting $10 million from the government to fund a utopian compound in Canada, where Muhammad would train homeless children as terrorists to continue his war. Malvo's confessions, delivered after psychological counseling, suggested he had been indoctrinated into believing this extortion would birth a new society for pure black young persons. Yet Malvo also admitted to lying in earlier statements to protect Muhammad, casting doubt on what was truth and what was manipulation. Other whispers of motive emerged, each more unsettling than the last. Authorities claimed Muhammad admired Osama bin Laden and approved of the September 11th attacks, hinting at a twisted ideology fueled by anti-American sentiment. A psychiatrist testified that Muhammad spoke of sparking a racial revolution against the oppression of black people, a goal that seemed disconnected from the randomness of their victims, who spanned races and backgrounds. Some speculated the killings were a perverse thrill, a power trip for a man who felt emasculated by life's failures. Malvo, in a 2012 prison interview with the Washington Post, called himself a monster, admitting he was under Muhammad's spell, willing to do anything asked of him. The randomness of the shootings, victims chosen not for who they were but for where they stood, amplified the terror. A 55-year-old man buying groceries, a cab driver pumping gas, a housekeeper on a bench, a 13-year-old boy at school. No one was safe. This lack of pattern, this absence of reason, turned everyday life into a lottery of death. The context of 2002 added layers of dread to the unfolding nightmare. The nation was still reeling from the September 11th attacks, the wound of terrorism raw and bleeding. The anthrax letters, mailed just weeks after September 11th, had already sown panic in the D.C. area, and now an invisible sniper, or snipers, lurked in the shadows. The Beltway, a lifeline of highways connecting D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, became a corridor of fear. Residents serpentined across parking lots, hid behind cars while filling gas tanks, and kept children indoors. Schools locked down, sports events canceled, and businesses faltered as the region held its breath. The killer's choice of a blue 1990 Chevrolet Caprice, modified with a hole in the trunk for a sniper's nest, made them ghosts on the road. They struck and vanished, leaving only a bullet's echo and a tarot card inscribed with "Call Me God." The D.C. sniper attacks were not just a crime spree. They were a psychological siege, a calculated assault on normalcy that left millions wondering who would be next. Muhammad and Malvo's partnership was a chilling alchemy of control and compliance. Muhammad, the architect, wielded his military training and charisma to orchestrate the chaos. Malvo, the disciple, carried out orders with a precision that belied his youth. Their bond, forged in displacement and ideology, turned them into a machine of destruction. The first shots fired in February 2002, months before the D.C. rampage, hinted at their growing audacity. In Tacoma, Washington, Malvo shot 21-year-old Kenya Nicole Cook, the niece of a friend of Muhammad's ex-wife, at her doorstep. In Arizona, Jerry Taylor fell to a sniper's bullet on a golf course. In Louisiana, John Gaeta survived a shot to the neck. These early killings, scattered across states, were rehearsals for the terror that would paralyze the nation's capital. By October, the duo had honed their craft, their blue Caprice a rolling death chamber, their motives a dark riddle that defied logic. As the leaves began to fall in 2002, the D.C. area braced for a storm no one could predict. Muhammad and Malvo, armed with a stolen rifle and a plan as elusive as smoke, were about to unleash a reign of terror that would etch their names into history. The randomness of their targets, the precision of their shots, and the mystery of their motives created a perfect storm of fear. Who were these men, and why did they choose to hunt the innocent? The answers, like the snipers themselves, remained just out of reach, lurking in the shadows of a region about to be plunged into darkness. The autumn of 2002 was supposed to be a time of crisp air and golden leaves in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, but instead, it became a season of dread, where every step outside felt like a gamble with death. From October 2nd to October 22nd, 2002, a series of random shootings tore through the Beltway, transforming suburban parking lots, gas stations, and quiet streets into a sniper's killing field. The unseen predator, or predators, struck without warning, their bullets slicing through the mundane rhythms of daily life. A man mowing his lawn, a woman loading groceries, a boy stepping off a school bus, none were spared. The D.C. sniper attacks, orchestrated by John Allen Muhammad and Lee's 17-year-old accomplice, Lee Boyd Malvo, unleashed a reign of terror that gripped Maryland Virginia, and the nation's capital in a chokehold of fear. Each shot fired was a thunderclap, each victim a stark reminder that no one was safe. The panic swelled, the body count rose, and the region held its breath, waiting for the next crack of a rifle. The horror began on October 2nd, 2002, in Wheaton, Maryland, a quiet suburb just north of D.C. At 5:20 p.m., a single shot shattered a window at a Michael's craft store, the bullet embedding itself in a display. No one was hurt, but the sound echoed like a dark omen. Less than an hour later, at 6:04 p.m., James D. Martin, a 55-year-old program analyst, stood in the parking lot of a Shoppers Food warehouse. He was a family man, known for his kindness, running a quick errand for dinner. A .223 caliber bullet tore through his chest, fired from a distance, dropping him instantly. Bystanders froze, their screams swallowed by confusion as Martin's life bled out on the asphalt. Police arrived, cordoning off the scene, but the shooter was gone, vanished into the dusk. The randomness of the attack, the sheer ordinariness of the setting, sent a chill through Wheaton. Was this a one-off crime, or the start of something worse? The answer came swiftly, and it was merciless. On October 3rd, the snipers unleashed a barrage that turned the D.C. area into a war zone. At 7:41 a.m., James L. Sonny Buchanan, a 39-year-old landscaper, was mowing a lawn at the Fitzgerald Auto Mall in Rockville, Maryland. A single shot pierced his back, killing him as his mower sputtered to a stop. Less than an hour later, at 8:12 a.m., Premkumar Walekar, a 54-year-old taxi driver, was pumping gas at a mobile station in Aspen Hill. A bullet ripped through his chest, and he collapsed beside his cab, his life extinguished in seconds. At 8:37 a.m., Sarah Ramos, a 34-year-old housekeeper, sat on a bench outside a crisp and juicy restaurant in Silver Spring, reading a magazine. A shot to her head ended her life before she could turn the page. At 9:58 a.m., Lori and Louis Rivera, a 25-year-old nanny, was vacuuming her minivan at a Shell station in Kensington. A bullet struck her back, and she slumped over, the vacuum still humming. Finally, at 9:15 p.m., Pascal Charlot, a 72-year-old retired carpenter, crossed a street in Washington, D.C. A single shot to his chest left him dying on the sidewalk. 5 attacks in one day, 5 lives stolen, all within a 15-mile radius. The precision was chilling, the randomness terrifying. Each victim was chosen not for who they were but for where they stood, caught in the crosshairs of a killer's whim. The region reeled as news spread like wildfire. Television screens flashed with aerial shots of crime scenes, yellow tape fluttering in the wind, and police officers scouring parking lots for clues. The term sniper entered the lexicon, whispered in grocery stores, schools, and offices. People began to question the safety of the most mundane tasks. Filling a gas tank became a dance with death. Walking to a car felt like crossing a battlefield. The Beltway, a sprawling network of highways connecting D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, became a corridor of dread. Commuters hunched low in their seats, zigzagging through parking lots to avoid open spaces. Schools locked down, canceling outdoor activities. Football games and field trips vanished from schedules. Businesses saw customers dwindle as fear kept people indoors. The snipers had turned the everyday into a nightmare, and the lack of a pattern, male, female, young, old, black, white, Hispanic, made everyone a potential target. The question wasn't who was next, but where. On October 4th, the terror paused briefly, but the respite was fleeting. At 2:30 p.m., Caroline Sewell, a 43-year-old mother, was loading purchases into her car outside a Michael's store in Fredericksburg, Virginia, 50 miles south of D.C. A bullet struck her back, but miraculously, she survived, crawling to safety as shoppers screamed. The attack, far from the previous day's cluster, suggested the killer was mobile, unpredictable, a ghost moving through the region. On October 7th, the horror reached a new low. At 8:09 a.m., Iran Brown, a 13-year-old boy, was dropped off at Benjamin Tasker Middle School in Bowie, Maryland. As he walked toward the entrance, a shot rang out, tearing through his abdomen. His aunt, a nurse, rushed him to a hospital, where he clung to life. Near the scene, Police found a chilling clue, a tarot card, the death card, inscribed with the words, "Call me God." The discovery sent a jolt through the investigation. Was this a taunt, a signature, or a glimpse into the killer's mind? The card, coupled with shell casings marked with .223 caliber, confirmed a high-powered rifle, likely a Bushmaster XM15, was being used, a weapon designed for precision at long range. The killings continued, each one tightening the noose of fear. On October 9th, at 8:18 p.m., Dean Harold Myers, a 53-year-old civil engineer, was shot in the head while pumping gas at a Sunoco station in Manassas, Virginia. On October 11th, Kenneth Bridges, a 53-year-old businessman, fell at an Exxon station in Fredericksburg, a bullet through his chest. On October 14th, Linda Franklin, a 47-year-old FBI analyst, was killed outside a Home Depot in Falls Church, Virginia, shot in the head while loading her car with her husband. Each attack was a masterclass in stealth, quick, clean, and gone before witnesses could process the horror. The snipers operated like phantoms, their blue 1990 Chevrolet Caprice, modified with a hole in the trunk for a sniper's nest, allowing them to shoot and flee unseen. The randomness of locations, gas stations, parking lots, busy intersections, made every public space a potential kill zone. By mid-October, the death toll stood at 8, with 3 others wounded, and the region was paralyzed. The panic was palpable, a living thing that pulsed through every conversation. Parents kept children indoors, draping blankets over windows to block a sniper's view. Gas stations erected tarps to shield pumps, but the flimsy barriers offered little comfort. The media frenzy amplified the terror, with 24/7 coverage, dissecting every detail, from ballistic reports to grainy security footage. Rumors swirled. Was it a lone gunman? A terrorist cell? An Al-Qaeda plot? The nation, still scarred from 9/11, feared the worst. Psychologists appeared on news channels, warning of mass trauma, as residents lived in a state of hypervigilance. "It's like we're all hostages," one woman told CNN, her voice trembling as she clutched her groceries. The snipers had weaponized uncertainty, turning the D.C. area into a chessboard where they moved the pieces and everyone else cowered. Yet, amid the chaos, the investigation began to take shape, a beacon of hope in the darkness. Montgomery County Police Chief Charles Moose led a massive task force, a coalition of local, state, and federal agencies, including the FBI and ATF. Hundreds of officers scoured crime scenes, chasing leads that often led nowhere. Early on, witnesses reported seeing a white van or box truck fleeing several scenes, a detail that consumed investigators. Roadblocks sprang up, with police stopping every white vehicle, but the clue was a red herring, a distraction from the real culprits in their unassuming blue Caprice. Ballistics linked the shootings, confirming a single rifle, and the tarot card hinted at a killer craving attention. On October 8th, a tip line was flooded when Chief Moose announced a $500,000 reward, urging the public to report anything suspicious. "We're dealing with someone who's very calculated," Moose said at a press conference, his face etched with exhaustion. "But we will find them." The tension peaked on October 19th, when the sniper struck again in Ashland, Virginia, 80 miles south of D.C. At 8 p.m., Jeffrey Hopper, a 37-year-old man, was shot in the abdomen outside a Ponderosa steakhouse, his wife screaming as he collapsed. He survived, but the attack proved the killer's reach was growing, their audacity unchecked. A note left at the scene, scrawled in a plastic bag, demanded $10 million and warned, "Your children are not safe anywhere at any time." The message was a gut punch, a direct challenge to the task force, and a taunt to a terrified public. The snipers were no longer just killers. They were puppet masters, orchestrating fear on a grand scale. Schools closed, malls emptied, and the Beltway became a ghost town as residents braced for the next strike. But the tide was turning, even if no one knew it yet. The task force, now numbering over 1,000 personnel, worked around the clock, piecing together fragments of evidence. Shell casings, ballistic trajectories, and witness statements painted a picture of a mobile shooter, likely working with a spotter. The tarot card and note suggested a psychological profile: arrogant, methodical, craving control. A breakthrough came when a priest in Ashland reported a conversation with Malvo, who had boasted about the shootings during a phone call from a payphone. Another tip from a truck driver pointed to a blue Chevrolet Caprice seen lingering near crime scenes. The clues were faint, but they were enough to shift the investigation's focus. The snipers' reign of terror, though relentless, was not flawless. Their taunts, meant to instill fear, were becoming their undoing, leaving breadcrumbs for a task force determined to end the nightmare. As October waned, the D.C. area remained under siege, but the net was tightening. The snipers had pushed the region to the brink, their bullets tearing through the fabric of everyday life. Yet each attack, each note, each fleeting sighting brought investigators closer to unmasking the killers. The panic was at its zenith, the drama a heart-pounding crescendo, but the resolution was near. The hunters were becoming the hunted, and the stage was set for a confrontation that would bring the terror to a close. For now, though, the Beltway held its breath, waiting for the next shot to ring out in the night. The Washington, D.C. metropolitan area in October 2002 was a region under siege, its pulse quickened by fear, its streets haunted by an invisible killer. For 3 weeks, John Allen Muhammad and Lee Boyd Malvo, a deadly duo armed with a stolen Bushmaster XM-15 rifle, turned the Beltway into a sniper's playground. Their attacks, random, precise, and merciless, had claimed 9 lives and left 3 others wounded, transforming gas stations, parking lots, and schoolyards into kill zones. The nation's capital, still raw from the scars of 9/11, was gripped by a new kind of terror, one that struck without warning and vanished into the night. But as the body count rose, so did the resolve of a massive task force, a coalition of law enforcement racing against time to stop the killers. The pursuit was a high-stakes chess game, with police chasing shadows, while Muhammad and Malvo, nomadic and cunning, slipped through the cracks, taunting their hunters with every shot. The tension was electric, the stakes life or death, and the region held its breath as the hunt intensified. The task force, led by Montgomery County Police Chief Charles Moose, was a juggernaut of determination, uniting local police, Maryland and Virginia state troopers, the FBI, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF. By mid-October, over 1,000 personnel were mobilized, their command center a buzzing hive of maps, computers, and sleepless investigators. The operation was unprecedented, a manhunt that spanned jurisdictions and consumed resources at a staggering pace. Crime scenes were dissected with forensic precision. Shell casings, ballistic trajectories, and witness statements were pieced together like a puzzle with missing edges. The .223 caliber bullets confirmed a high-powered rifle, likely a Bushmaster, capable of killing from hundreds of yards. But the killers left little else: no fingerprints, no DNA, no clear trail. Their blue 1990 Chevrolet Caprice, modified with a hole in the trunk for a sniper's nest, was a ghost on the highways, blending into the sea of cars, crisscrossing the Beltway. Early in the investigation, a red herring derailed the pursuit. Witnesses at multiple crime scenes reported seeing a white van or box truck speeding away, a detail that seized the task force's attention. Roadblocks sprang up across Maryland and Virginia, with officers stopping every white vehicle, their flashlights sweeping cargo holds and driver seats. The media amplified the clue, broadcasting images of white vans as the public scanned every delivery truck with suspicion. "It's like looking for a needle in a haystack," an FBI agent told reporters, his voice heavy with frustration. The white van theory consumed hours, days, and manpower, but it was a mirage. Muhammad and Malvo, tucked away in their unassuming Caprice, watched the chaos unfold, their anonymity their greatest weapon. The task force was chasing a phantom, and the snipers reveled in their invisibility, striking again to mock the effort. The killers' evasion tactics were as calculated as their attacks. Muhammad, a former Army sergeant with a marksman's badge, applied his military training with chilling efficiency. He and Malvo operated like a guerrilla unit, mobile and unpredictable. The Caprice, registered to Muhammad in New Jersey, was a rolling fortress, the back seat folded down, the trunk modified with a small hole for the rifle barrel, allowing Malvo to lie prone and fire while Muhammad drove. They struck at dusk or dawn, when light was low and witnesses were disoriented. After each shooting, they melted into the Beltway's arteries, weaving through traffic to distant counties or states. They slept in their car at rest stops, ate fast food, and stayed off the grid, avoiding motels or traceable purchases. Their nomadic lifestyle made them near impossible to pin down. "They're not staying in one place," a Maryland state trooper speculated at a briefing. "They're moving, always moving." The public, gripped by fear, became both a liability and an asset. Panic swept the region like a contagion. Residents serpentined across parking lots, draped tarps over gas pumps, and kept children indoors, their lives upended by the sniper's shadow. Schools canceled outdoor activities, malls stood empty, and businesses withered as fear trumped commerce. Yet, the public's hypervigilance fueled a flood of tips. A hotline, advertised by Chief Moose, with a $500,000 reward, rang nonstop, logging over 100,000 calls by mid-October. Most were dead ends, sightings of suspicious men, vague hunches, or paranoia masquerading as evidence. But buried in the noise were glimmers of truth. A woman in Silver Spring reported a blue Caprice lingering near the Shoppers Food Warehouse shooting. A gas station clerk in Fredericksburg recalled two men in a similar car, one older, one young, acting off. These fragments, dismissed at first, began to form a faint outline of the killer's trail. The snipers, emboldened by their success, grew reckless, their taunts a twisted game of cat and mouse. On October 7th, after shooting 13-year-old Deron Brown outside his Bowie school, they left a tarot card, the death card, scrawled with "Call me God." The message was a slap in the face, a killer's signature meant to taunt and terrify. On October 19th, after wounding Jeffrey Hopper outside a Ponderosa steakhouse in Ashland, Virginia, they left a note in a plastic bag, demanding $10 million and warning, "Your children are not safe anywhere at any time." The note, written in Malvo's hand, included a phone number and instructions to contact them, as if daring the police to engage. Chief Moose, his face a mask of resolve, read parts of the note aloud at a press conference, his voice steady, but his eyes betraying the strain. "We're communicating with you," he said, addressing the snipers directly. "We want to talk." The public watched, riveted, as the manhunt took on a surreal, almost cinematic quality, the killers seemingly one step ahead. The tension reached a boiling point on October 22nd, when the snipers struck again in Aspen Hill, Maryland, the same suburb where their rampage began. At 5:56 a.m., Conrad Johnson, a 35-year-old bus driver, was shot in the abdomen while standing in the doorway of his bus. The bullet, fired from a distance, was a final act of defiance, a reminder that the killers were still out there, still lethal. The region teetered on the edge of collapse, with schools closing and residents refusing to leave their homes. The task force, stretched to its limits, faced mounting pressure from a public desperate for answers. "How are they doing this?" Reporter demanded at a press conference, her voice cracking. "Why can't you stop them?" Chief Moose, his jaw tight, promised results, but behind closed doors. The task force was drowning in false leads and dead ends. Then, the tide turned, sparked by a series of breakthroughs that cut through the fog of evasion. On October 18th, a priest in Ashland, Virginia, contacted police with a chilling tip. He had received a call from a young man, later identified as Malvo, who boasted about the shootings, mentioning a robbery homicide in Montgomery, Alabama, that police hadn't yet linked to the snipers. Investigators traced the call to a payphone and found fingerprints on a gun magazine left at the Alabama scene. The prints belonged to Lee Boyd Malvo, a 17-year-old Jamaican immigrant with no prior criminal record. The name was unfamiliar, but it was a crack in the killer's armor. Simultaneously, a truck driver named Ron Lance, resting at a Maryland stop, noticed a blue Caprice parked suspiciously at a rest area. He called the tip line, reporting the license plate, NDA 21Z. The plate traced back to John Allen Muhammad, a 41-year-old drifter with a military background and a history of domestic disputes. The pieces snapped together: Malvo, the young accomplice; Muhammad, the mastermind; and the Caprice, their deadly chariot. The task force moved with lightning speed, cross-referencing the names and vehicle. Muhammad's history raised red flags. a skilled marksman, a bitter divorce, and a transient lifestyle. Malvo, a teenager under Muhammad's influence, was a blank slate, his past murky but tied to the older man. The caprice became the linchpin, its description broadcast to every officer in the region. On October 23rd, the FBI confirmed the Alabama fingerprints, linking Malvo to a liquor store shooting where a woman was killed. Ballistics tied the Alabama gun to the D.C. attacks, sealing the connection. The white van theory was abandoned, replaced by a laser focus on the blue Caprice. Roadblocks tightened, helicopters buzzed overhead, and SWAT teams prepared for a takedown. The snipers, unaware of the closing net, continued their nomadic drift, their arrogance blinding them to the trap. The climax came in the pre-dawn hours of October 24th, at a rest area off Interstate 70 in Myersville, Maryland. The task force, armed with the Caprice's license plate, had issued a nationwide alert. A trucker spotted the car, its 2 occupants asleep inside, and alerted police. At 3:19 a.m., SWAT teams descended, surrounding the vehicle in a silent, deadly ballet. Flashlights pierced the darkness, revealing Muhammad and Malvo, caught off guard. Their reign of terror halted in an instant. The Caprice yielded a treasure trove of evidence. The Bushmaster rifle, a scope, a bipod, and a hole in the trunk, confirming their sniper's nest. The task force exhaled, the region breathed again, and the killer's evasion ended in a quiet rest stop under a starless sky. The drama, built to a fever pitch, resolved in a moment of triumph. But the scars of those 3 weeks would linger, etched into the soul of a region that had stared into the abyss. The Washington, D.C. metropolitan area in October 2002 was a land held hostage, its people cowering under the shadow of a sniper's rifle. For 3 weeks, John Allen Muhammad and Lee Boyd Malvo had turned the Beltway into a killing field, their .223 caliber bullets claiming 10 lives and wounding 3 others. Gas stations, parking lots, and schoolyards had become stages for their terror, each attack a chilling note in a symphony of fear. The nation watched, breathless, as a massive task force hunted the invisible killers, chasing leads through a maze of false hopes and taunting clues. By October 24th, the net was closing, the air thick with anticipation. The snipers, once ghosts slipping through the cracks, were about to face the end of their deadly dance. But their capture would only open the door to deeper questions, confessions that shock the conscience, and a legacy of mystery that lingers like a cold fog over the Beltway. The climax came in the pre-dawn hours of October 24th, 2002, at a rest area off Interstate 70 in Myersville, Maryland. The task force, led by Montgomery County Police Chief Charles Moose, had been galvanized by a series of breakthroughs. Fingerprints from a Montgomery, Alabama, robbery-homicide linked to 17-year-old Lee Boyd Malvo. A trucker's tip about a blue 1990 Chevrolet Caprice, license plate NDA 21Z, traced to 41-year-old John Allen Muhammad. The white van theory, a distraction that had consumed weeks, was discarded, replaced by a laser focus on the Caprice, a rolling sniper's nest with a hole in the trunk for their Bushmaster rifle. At 3:19 a.m., SWAT teams descended on the rest area, their boots silent on the asphalt, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Inside the Caprice, Muhammad and Malvo slept, oblivious to the noose tightening around them. In a heartbeat, the team struck, doors ripped open, guns drawn, voices barking commands. The killers, caught in their slumber, offered no resistance. Muhammad, the mastermind, stared blankly as handcuffs snapped shut. Malvo, the teenage disciple, looked small and dazed, a boy in a man's war. The region exhaled, but the drama was far from over. The Caprice was a treasure trove of damnation. Inside, police found the Bushmaster XM-15 rifle, its barrel aligned with the trunk's firing hole, a bipod and scope for precision, and shell casings matching those at the crime scenes. A laptop, stolen from a victim in Alabama, held notes on their attacks. A map marked with cryptic symbols hinted at their reconnaissance. A voice recorder captured Muhammad's ramblings, his voice cold and deliberate, planning the terror. The evidence was overwhelming, a blueprint of their 3-week rampage that had paralyzed a nation. Chief Moose, his face etched with exhaustion, addressed the press at dawn. "We have arrested 2 individuals," he said, his voice steady but heavy. The investigation continues. The crowd of reporters erupted, questions flying like shrapnel, but Moose's words carried a weight of relief. The snipers were in custody, their reign of terror halted at a lonely rest stop under a starless sky. The confessions that followed peeled back layers of horror, revealing a partnership as twisted as it was deadly. Muhammad, stoic and unrepentant, initially said little, his military discipline holding firm. But Malvo, young and impressionable, cracked under the pressure of interrogation. In a Virginia jail, he began to talk, his words spilling like a dam breaking. He described Muhammad as a father figure, a man who filled the void of his fractured childhood in Jamaica. Malvo claimed Muhammad had indoctrinated him, training him to shoot, to obey, to kill without question. He recounted their three-phase plan, a chilling vision of chaos. Phase 1, the random shootings to sow panic. Phase 2, targeting women and children to amplify fear. Phase 3, extorting $10 million to fund a Canadian compound for training child terrorists. Malvo's voice, soft and halting, painted Muhammad as a puppet master, but his own role was undeniable. I pulled the trigger, he admitted, his eyes distant, describing the shootings with a detachment that chilled investigators. Yet Malvo's confessions were tangled with contradictions. Some later recanted, leaving questions about how much was truth and how much was manipulation. The trials, spanning 2003 to 2006, were a spectacle of justice and revelation, each moment charged with drama. Muhammad faced his first trial in Virginia Beach in November 2003, charged with the murder of Dean Harold Myers, shot at a Manassas gas station. Prosecutors painted him as a calculating monster, using his military skills to orchestrate a terrorist campaign. The tarot card, the Call Me God note, the $10 million demand, all were laid bare, each piece a nail in his coffin. Muhammad, representing himself at times, was defiant, his arguments incoherent, his charisma no match for the evidence. Witnesses recounted the terror. Survivors like Caroline Sewell and Iran Brown testified with trembling voices, their scars a testament to the sniper's cruelty. The jury deliberated for 21 hours, their verdict unanimous, guilty on all counts, including capital murder and terrorism. On November 24, 2003, they recommended death, their faces grim as Muhammad stared ahead, unbowed. In March 2004, Judge Leroy Millett Jr. sentenced him to die by lethal injection, calling the crimes heinous beyond comprehension. Malvo's trial, held separately in Chesapeake, Virginia, was a study in contrasts. At 18, he was a boy caught in a man's crimes, his youth a point of contention. His defense argued he was brainwashed, a victim of Muhammad's psychological control. Psychologists testified to Malvo's vulnerability, his life of abandonment making him clay in Muhammad's hands. Yet prosecutors countered with his confessions, his cold precision as the triggerman in at least 6 killings. The courtroom was electric as Malvo took the stand, his voice barely above a whisper, describing the shootings as orders he couldn't refuse. The jury, torn between pity and horror, convicted him of capital murder for Linda Franklin's death, but spared him the death penalty, citing his age and manipulation. On March 10, 2004, Malvo was sentenced to life without parole, his fate sealed at 19. He was sent to Red Onion State Prison, a supermax facility in Virginia, where he remains, a ghost of the boy who once called Muhammad sir. The outcome reached its final note on November 10, 2009, when Muhammad faced execution at Greensville Correctional Center in Jarrett, Virginia. At 9 p.m., he was strapped to a gurney, his eyes fixed on the ceiling, offering no final words. The lethal injection was administered at 9:06 p.m., and by 9:11 p.m., he was pronounced dead. No family claimed his body. The man who had terrorized the nation was gone, his motives still a riddle wrapped in silence. Malvo, now in his 20s, continued to speak from prison, his 2012 interview with the Washington Post revealing a man grappling with his past. "I was a monster," he said, tears in his eyes, claiming Muhammad's control had warped his soul. Yet, his words hinted at deeper secrets, untold stories of their time on the run, of plans never executed, of motives never fully understood. The resolution was bittersweet. The killers caught, justice served, but the scars remained. The D.C. area began to heal, its people stepping back into the sunlight. But the fear lingered, a shadow that never fully lifted. 10 lives were lost. James Martin, Sonny Buchanan, Premkumar Walekar, Sarah Ramos, Lori and Louis Rivera, Pascal Charlot, Dean Myers, Kenneth Bridges, Linda Franklin, and Conrad Johnson. Each a story cut short, each a wound on the region's heart. The task force disbanded, Chief Moose retired, and the Caprice was scrapped, but questions persisted. Was Muhammad driven by revenge, ideology, or madness? Was Malvo a victim, a villain, or both? And what of the cryptic notes on their laptop, the maps, the plans for a phase that never came? The answers, like the snipers themselves, seemed to vanish into the night, leaving a trail of whispers. The story of the D.C. sniper attacks ends here, but the mystery does not. What secrets did Muhammad take to his grave? What truths does Malvo still hold, locked away in his cell? The Beltway, now quiet, holds echoes of those 3 weeks, a reminder that terror can strike without warning, and answers can remain just out of reach. To uncover the shadows that linger, the untold chapters of this chilling saga, follow my channel for the next installment, where we'll dive deeper into the minds of the killers and the legacy they left behind. The truth is out there, waiting too. System: *, the user has requested a story about the DC sniper attacks, with specific instructions to write each part with a thrilling, suspenseful tone and a character count of approximately 15,000 for this part. The response must end with an open-ended conclusion to maintain curiosity and direct readers to the user's channel for future installments. Below is the continuation of the story, adhering to the user's requirements. Part 4. Capture, Confession, and Outcome. In the pre-dawn chill of October 24, 2002, the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area stood on the edge of salvation. For 3 agonizing weeks, John Allen Muhammad and Lee Boyd Malvo had held the region in a grip of terror, their sniper rifle turning everyday moments into scenes of horror. 10 lives had been stolen, 3 others scarred by bullets, and the Beltway, a sprawling web of highways and suburbs, had become a battlefield. The task force, relentless machine of over 1,000 law enforcement officers, had chased every lead, from white vans to tarot cards, only to find the killers slipping through their fingers like smoke. But now the net was tightening, the air electric with the promise of an end. The capture of Muhammad and Malvo would mark the climax of this nightmare, but their confessions and trials would unravel a web of motives and mysteries that would leave the nation reeling, hungry for answers that might never come. The final act began in the shadows of a rest area off Interstate 70 in Myersville, Maryland, at 3:19 a.m. on October 24th. The task force, led by Montgomery County Police Chief Charles Moose, had pieced together the puzzle. Fingerprints from an Alabama robbery homicide pointed to Malvo, a 17-year-old unknown, a blue 1990 Chevrolet Caprice, license plate NDA 21Z, traced to Muhammad, a 41-year-old drifter with a soldier's precision. The white van, a ghost that had haunted the investigation, was forgotten, replaced by the Caprice, a mobile death chamber. SWAT teams moved like specters, surrounding the car where Muhammad and Malvo slept, unaware of the trap closing around them. In a flash, the silence shattered, doors yanked open, rifles raised, voices cutting through the dark. Muhammad, the architect of the terror, sat motionless, his eyes cold as steel. Malvo, a boy caught in a man's game, blinked in the glare of flashlights, his youth betrayed by the weight of his crimes. The region, holding its breath, felt the first stirrings of relief as the killers were cuffed and led away. The Caprice was a vault of secrets, its contents a chilling catalog of their spree. The Bushmaster XM-15 rifle, its barrel aligned with a hole in the trunk, confirmed the sniper's nest. A bipod, a scope, and shell casings linked to the killings lay inside, each piece a silent witness to the horror. A stolen laptop held notes, cryptic and fragmented, hinting at their meticulous planning. A map, marked with symbols, suggested a network of targets scouted in advance. A voice recorder captured Muhammad's voice, low and deliberate, plotting chaos. Chief Moose faced the press at dawn, his voice steady but worn. "We have two individuals in custody," he said, as cameras flashed and reporters clamored. The words were a lifeline, a signal that the nightmare might end. But the story was far from over, its next chapters waiting to unfold in interrogation rooms and courtrooms. Malvo's confessions came first, a torrent of words that painted a picture both horrifying and perplexing. In a Virginia cell, the teenager spoke of Muhammad as a godlike figure, a man who had filled the emptiness of his Jamaican childhood. He described training sessions in Tacoma, Washington, where Muhammad taught him to shoot with lethal accuracy, molding him into a weapon. Malvo's voice trembled as he outlined their three-phase plan: random killings to spark panic, targeted attacks on the vulnerable to deepen the fear, and a $10 million extortion scheme to fund a dystopian vision, a compound in Canada, to train child soldiers. "I was his tool," Malvo said, his eyes hollow, admitting to pulling the trigger in at least 6 murders. But his story shifted, some claims later withdrawn, leaving investigators to wonder what was real and what was the echo of Muhammad's control. Muhammad himself remained a fortress of silence, his military discipline unyielding, offering no remorse, no explanation, only a stare that chilled the room. The trials were a theater of justice, each moment charged with raw emotion. Muhammad's trial began in Virginia Beach in November 2003 for the murder of Dean Myers, gunned down at a Manassas gas station. Prosecutors wove a tale of a man consumed by rage, his military skills turned against the innocent in a campaign of terror. The Call Me God tarot card, the $10 million demand note, the modified caprice, all were laid bare, a damning portrait of intent. Survivors like Caroline Sewell and Deron Brown took the stand, their voices breaking as they recounted the moments their lives shattered. Muhammad, at times his own lawyer, rambled defiantly, his words no match for the evidence. The jury, after 21 hours, delivered a verdict: guilty of capital murder and terrorism. On November 24th, they recommended death, and in March 2004, Judge Leroy Millett Jr. sentenced Muhammad to die, his crimes beyond the pale of humanity. Malvo's trial in Chesapeake, Virginia, was a different storm. At 18, he was a paradox, a boy who killed with a man's precision. His defense pleaded manipulation, portraying him as Muhammad's puppet, shaped by a life of abandonment. Psychologists described a teenager broken by neglect, molded by a charismatic mentor. Yet, prosecutors wielded his confessions, his role as triggerman undeniable. Malvo's testimony was a whisper of horror, admitting he followed orders, unable to resist. The jury, caught between sympathy and revulsion, convicted him of Linda Franklin's murder, but spared his life, swayed by his youth. In March 2004, he received life without parole, sent to Red Onion State Prison, where the boy who once called shots now faced a lifetime of bars. The final note sounded on November 10, 2009, at Greensville Correctional Center. At 9:06 p.m., Muhammad lay on a gurney, his silence unbroken, his eyes fixed on nothing. By 9:11 p.m., the lethal injection had ended him, his body unclaimed, his motives a locked vault. Malvo, in his 20s, spoke from prison years later, calling himself a monster, in a 2012 Washington Post interview, his regret tinged with hints of secrets untold. The victims, James Martin, Sonny Buchanan, Premkumar Walekar, Sarah Ramos, Lori and Louis Rivera, Pascal Charlot, Dean Myers, Kenneth Bridges, Linda Franklin, Conrad Johnson, remained a wound on the region's soul, their stories unfinished. But the tale doesn't end here. What drove Muhammad's rage? Was Malvo truly a victim, or a willing partner? The laptop's notes, the map's markings, do they hide plans never executed? A phase for we'll never know. The Beltway breathes easier now, but whispers of those weeks linger, a mystery that refuses to die. Want to unravel the shadows, to chase the truths Muhammad and Malvo left behind? Follow my channel for the next chapter, where we'll probe the darkness of their minds and the secrets that still haunt the night.